In a quiet Georgia town, billionaire entrepreneur Silas Trent visits a small diner with his severely disabled daughter, Willow. Burned out and withdrawn, he watches as a kind-hearted waitress named Ilara treats Willow with gentle care and unshakable patience, feeding her, talking to her, and treating her like a person, not a burden. What Ilara doesn't know is that Silas has been silently searching for someone just like her. A string of seemingly ordinary encounters soon leads to a life-altering decision that will forever change Ilara's world. But not everyone is ready to accept what's coming, and some secrets are waiting just beneath the surface. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss a story. Ilara Miles had worked the Tuesday lunch shift at Crenshaw's Diner in Marietta, Georgia for 3 years. The heat outside pressed up against the windows like a living thing, but inside the old AC unit buzzed valiantly. It wasn't a fancy place, but the biscuits were good, the coffee hot, and the staff knew most customers by name. It was noon when the door opened, and a tall, sharply dressed man stepped inside. His face looked like it hadn't smiled in a while. Hard edges, ice blue eyes, and a stiffness in his shoulders. Behind him came a nurse, gently pushing a young girl in a wheelchair. The girl couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. Her limbs looked twisted with cerebral palsy, her head bobbing slightly, her mouth slack. Her wide eyes blinked slowly, like she was trying to keep up with a world that never waited for her. They were seated in a corner booth near the window. The man didn't say much. He opened a tablet, scrolled for a while, then sat silently, watching. Ilara noticed them right away. Something in the girl's eyes pulled at her, something unspoken but familiar. She approached the table with her usual bright smile. "Hi there, welcome to Crenshaw's. I'm Ilara. Can I get y'all started with something to drink?" The man nodded once. "Water for both." "Thank you." The girl made a sound, soft, garbled, but Ilara bent down to eye level. "Hey, sweet girl," she said gently. "Are you hungry?" The nurse started to answer, but Ilara turned her attention fully to the girl. "Can I help you pick something yummy?" The girl gave the smallest, most subtle nod. Silas Trent watched. Something flickered across his face, almost invisible. Almost. 10 minutes later. Ilara returned with a grilled cheese sandwich, sliced small, and applesauce on the side. The girl, Willow, wasn't able to feed herself. The nurse made a move to help, but Ilara gently held out her hand. "If it's okay, I'd love to help her," she said softly. "I used to help my little brother the same way." The nurse glanced at Silas. He gave the smallest nod. Ilara sat beside Willow and started feeding her with slow, rhythmic patience. She didn't rush. She didn't sigh. She didn't glance at the clock. "Is it okay if I tell you a story while you eat?" she asked. Willow made another soft noise. Ilara smiled. Once upon a time there was a girl who loved the sound of rain, but she lived in a desert. Every time a storm came, she'd run outside and spin in the water. Silas's tablet screen went dark. He was no longer scrolling, he was watching. Silas Trent wasn't used to being invisible. But that was exactly what he wanted right now. People knew the name. Trent Tech was printed on buildings and featured in magazines. But none of that mattered today. Today, he was just a father. An exhausted one. Willow had been born with severe brain damage after a difficult birth. Her mother, Mariah, had left 4 years ago. Said it was too much. Said she couldn't live in a world that demanded constant sacrifice. Silas hadn't blamed her, at least not out loud. But he hadn't known how alone a man could feel until the day she walked out. He had nannies, caretakers, the best medical care money could buy. But none of them saw Willow. Not like this waitress did. Silas studied the way Ilara spoke to Willow as if she understood every word. She didn't rush or look away when Willow drooled or flinched. She wiped her chin with a napkin, still telling that little story, still smiling. A part of him that had been buried under boardrooms and spreadsheets stirred. When Ilara returned with the check, Silas glanced at her name tag, then slid his black card toward her. "Keep the change," he said, then added, "Thank you for being so kind to her." Ilara blinked. Of course. She's lovely. She didn't ask for a photo. Didn't try to flatter him. Just smiled and went on serving coffee to the next booth. Silas didn't know it yet, but this was the moment that changed everything. 2 weeks later. Ilara was back on the Tuesday shift when she saw him again. Same suit, same quiet, same nurse wheeling in Willow. They returned every week after that. Always the same booth. Always the same food. Ilara began to notice things. the way Willow's eyes lit up when she saw her, the tiny twitch of a smile when Ilara started a story. One day, Ilara brought out a book of short stories she used to read to her brother, who had passed away years ago from muscular dystrophy. "She likes this one," Ilara said, gently tucking a napkin into Willow's collar. "It's about a garden that grows upside down." Silas watched her with a stillness that bordered on reverence. "You're not just doing this because it's your job," he said suddenly. Ilara looked up. "No, I'm doing it because I know what it's like to be overlooked." He nodded once, said nothing more. But that night, back in his home overlooking the Chattahoochee River, Silas stared out the window and made a phone call. "Find me everything on Ilara Miles. Employment history, education, living situation, everything." He didn't yet know why he needed to know. He just knew he did. 5 days later, Silas sat in his office, reading the report. Grew up in foster care. No college degree. Older brother passed away from a degenerative disease. 2 part-time jobs. Rent overdue. No criminal record. No outstanding debts. No family left. Still, she smiled like someone who carried sunlight in her pocket. He turned to his assistant. "I want her vetted. And if she passes, I want her hired." "Hired for what role, sir?" Silas closed the file and said, "We'll start with Willow." It was a bright Thursday morning when Ilara got the call. She was folding menus behind the counter when the diner phone rang. "This is Ilara," she answered, tucking the phone between her shoulder and cheek. A calm voice replied, "Ms. Miles, I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Silas Trent. He'd like to schedule a meeting with you, privately." Ilara blinked. "Mr. Trent, the man with the little girl?" "Yes, he'd like to discuss a job opportunity." "A job? Doing what?" The voice paused. "He'll explain in person. If you're available tomorrow, he can send a car at 10 a.m. Everything in her said this was strange. Too sudden, too vague, but something in her gut said it wasn't dangerous. She remembered how Silas looked at Willow, how he sat in silence while she read those stories. "All right," she said. "Tell him I'll be ready." The next day, 10:02 a.m. a sleek black SUV pulled up outside her apartment complex. Ilara stepped out, her nerves bundled up in her stomach. The driver opened the door without saying a word. The ride took 30 minutes out of Marietta and into the green, tree-lined roads north of Atlanta. At the top of a hill stood a stone estate, quiet, regal, and nothing like the world Ilara knew. She was ushered through large double doors into a sunlit sitting room where Silas waited, dressed more casually than she'd seen him before. No suit, just a button-up and jeans. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for her to sit. Ilara perched on the edge of a white couch, unsure if she should cross her legs or keep her hands folded. "I won't waste your time," Silas began. "I've watched how you treat my daughter, not just as a waitress, but as a human being who sees her. I don't see that very often." Ilara swallowed. "She's a beautiful girl." "She is," he agreed. "And she deserves more than caretakers who clock in and out." He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "I want to offer you a position. Not as a nurse. Willow already has those. But as a companion, a guide. Someone to talk to her, read to her, take her places. Help her live a life that doesn't revolve around hospital beds and therapy charts." Ilara's breath caught. "You want me to be with her full time?" Silas turned. "With a salary that reflects the value of what you're giving. A 6-figure one. Healthcare. Housing, if needed." It was like a wall of glass shattered inside her. "I don't have any medical training," she said. "I'm not hiring a nurse," he replied. "I'm hiring someone who can make her laugh." 2 weeks later, Ilara moved into a guest house on the estate. Every morning she walked across a flower-lined path to the main house, where Willow waited in the sunroom with her favorite storybook open on her lap. They painted birdhouses. They listened to music. Ilara even arranged for a therapy dog to visit once a week. Willow's muscles still tensed, her movements still involuntary, but her eyes followed Ilara now, her lips sometimes curled upward, almost a smile. Silas noticed everything, even when he pretended not to. But not everyone in the house approved. Alicia, Willow's live-in nurse for the past 3 years, had been growing colder. She kept her distance from Ilara, offering curt replies, her gaze always watchful. "She's not trained," Alicia once muttered to Silas after Ilara had taken Willow out for a picnic. "If something happens..." Nothing will happen, Silas said flatly, and she's exactly what Willow needs. But Alicia's silence that followed was full of something unspoken. 1 month later, on a breezy Thursday, Ilara was wheeling Willow along a gravel path near the estate garden when she noticed the brake on the wheelchair felt loose. Just slightly, but enough to make her uneasy. She knelt to check it. The bolt was almost unscrewed. Odd. She brought it to Alicia's attention. It must have loosened over time, Alicia said with a shrug. But it was just serviced last week, Ilara replied. Alicia didn't answer. That night, Ilara couldn't sleep. Something about the brake felt intentional. 3 days later, Silas found Ilara in the sunroom with a concerned expression. I think someone tampered with Willow's chair, she said cautiously. Maybe I'm wrong. But the brake wasn't normal. Silas stiffened. Did you see anyone touch it? No. But Alicia was dismissive. And she hasn't liked me from the start. Silas exhaled slowly. Alicia's been with us a long time. I trust her. But I trust you too. He rubbed his jaw. I'll have the security team review the footage. 5 hours later, the head of security knocked on Silas's office door. You need to see this, sir. The footage showed Alicia wheeling Willow outside 2 days ago, pausing on the same path, kneeling down and pulling a wrench from her pocket. Silas stared at the screen in silence. Then he said, She's done here. Immediately. Chapter 4, The Unexpected. The next morning, Alicia was gone. Ilara never saw her again. Silas apologized for not believing her right away. I understand, Ilara said. Trust is hard when you've been burned. He nodded, but there was a weariness in his face, one that hadn't left him since the day Ilara met him. They sat in silence until Willow made a soft humming noise. Ilara smiled and began to hum back, creating a small tune. Willow's eyes fluttered closed. Silas watched them. 2 people who should have been worlds apart but weren't. He cleared his throat. You've done more for her in 2 months than anyone in 5 years. Ilara gave him a small, honest smile. She's done more for me. 5 months later. The sun filtered through the magnolia trees as Ilara wheeled Willow into the new garden courtyard. It was Silas's latest project, one that hadn't existed 6 months ago. A fully accessible sensory garden designed for children with disabilities. Butterflies flitted over lavender bushes, and the path gently curved through a landscape of color, texture, and sound. Chimes sang softly in the breeze. The benches were custom-made, low, with wide arms so a caregiver could sit with a child and read for hours. And right in the center, carved in soft, elegant stone, was a plaque. Willow's Garden, a space to be seen, heard, and loved. Ilara's eyes misted over when she saw it. She's going to love this. Silas stood beside her, his face unreadable but his eyes bright. She already does, he said. Willow cooed softly, reaching out one stiff arm as a butterfly landed on her lap. Later that day, over sweet tea and cut fruit on the garden's edge, Silas turned to Ilara. I'm building something bigger, a foundation. She blinked. For what? For children like Willow. For parents like me. For caregivers like you. He explained the plans, a series of programs, grants, training centers, and sensory spaces in schools. Not just in Georgia, but across the South, starting in Marietta. I want you to lead it with me, he said. Ilara nearly dropped her tea. Silas, I don't have a degree. I never finished college. I've never led anything. He smiled. You've led Willow out of a world of silence. That's more than enough for me. Ilara laughed, then stopped. You're serious. I've never been more serious. He reached into his pocket and slid a folder toward her. Inside was a formal offer, a title, Director of Programs, Willow Foundation, and a figure that made her eyes widen. I'll have support around you. But I need your heart in this. Ilara looked down at Willow, who had fallen asleep with a flower in her hand, then back at Silas. I'm in. 6 months later. Crenshaw's Diner now displayed a large photo on the wall of Ilara, standing beside Willow and Silas at the ribbon cutting of the Willow Community Center in downtown Marietta. Word had spread. News outlets, social media, local radio. The story of the waitress who fed a disabled girl and changed everything had gone viral. But behind the headlines, it was still the little moments that mattered. like Willow giggling when Ilara made up silly songs, like Silas showing up at the diner one quiet morning with a bouquet of gardenias and asking Ilara if she'd like to, quote, try dinner somewhere without a menu board for once. They went out that Friday. Nothing extravagant, just a small rooftop cafe overlooking the Chattahoochee. But Silas looked different that day, less guarded, more human. I never thought I'd meet someone who would love her without being paid to, he said as they watched the river drift by. Ilara's voice was soft. I'm not here for the money, Silas. I know, he said. That's why I trust you. 1 year later, Ilara stood on the stage of a conference in Atlanta, speaking to hundreds of educators, caregivers, and advocates. She told them the story of a little girl who couldn't speak but could still listen, of a waitress who didn't look away, of a man with more money than time and a heart he thought was broken. She ended with this. We are not here to fix children like Willow. We're here to see them, to value them, to build a world where they can bloom. Every child deserves to be more than a diagnosis. And sometimes, all it takes is one person who's willing to sit at their level and say, I see you. The crowd rose to their feet. Silas watched from the front row, Willow in his lap, clapping her small hand against his. And Ilara smiled, knowing the story was only just beginning. Ilara had no riches, no titles, just kindness, patience, and a heart that saw worth in someone others overlooked. True change doesn't always come from wealth or power. It comes from seeing people, truly seeing them, and choosing to care. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notification to be the first to know when the next story drops.